to question and answer. And the first question goes to Clara, yourself. And the question reads as follows. What is the involvement that you claim of Eritrean top leaders in human trafficking? Is there any proof of this?
What has been shown by researchers is that high-level Eritrean authorities along the borders, for example, have been involved, especially in trafficking in the Sinai region. This is trafficking of Eritrean refugees that was taking the Eritrean refugees to the Sinai desert in Egypt, where they were then tortured and ransom was extorted from them. And that, for example, high-level generals were involved, and people have also been, names have also been documented, such as generals of the Eritrean authorities. And these generals have been involved in transporting people over the border and also in the kidnapping of refugees. And in addition, what I have seen a lot in my research is that ransoms that have been paid in countries such as Libya are paid directly in Eritrea. And such documented cases show that there is direct knowledge because the financial system in Eritrea is under the complete control of the Eritrean government. So research have been referring to such instances.
Thank you very much, Clara. Thank you very much. The second question goes to Mulu Buhan. How do you see the situation of Eritrean involvement in Ethiopia and in Tigray?
The main problem of the Horn of Africa is the region in Eritrea, and that's why they escalate the war in Ethiopia to a regional case, like full involvement of the region in Tigray's war indicates how they were planned to practice the same action. Like, for example, there is a siege in Tigray at this time for about 20 months. The same case is happened in Eritrea for 20 years, since 2000 till now. It is in a siege. Anyone who wanted to flee from Eritrea, if they capture, they can kill, they can imprison, they can torture, or they can punish him. So the war in Tigray is owned or taking. I have information from Ethiopia, from some members of the military, which are still serving for the regime. Some are in Gondar, some are in Afar, some are inside Tigray. So the full-scale war that is already taken by the regime in Eritrea is already known, already proved, already taking place.
Thank you, Mulu, for this reply. The second question to you, Mulu Buhan, is similar to what is happening in Ukraine currently. The regime in Eritrea is committing crimes of aggression, crime against humanity, war crimes, etc. Why do you think the ICC prosecutor is not even trying to see what is happening in the Horn of Africa and Eritrea in particular?
Yeah, the reaction of the international community against the Russian invasion to Russia is very nice. It's excellent, and it is also very good to look. The Eritrean government makes the same action against his own people and against the Tigray people. So the international committee, the international community do not play its role as the actions who take in Ukraine. But that's why we are starting this occasion and this momentum to awoke the international community to look against the actions of the regime in Asmara against human rights violation there, and takes action against the regime fully like what they are doing against Russia. That is why the momentum is good to us to compare and contrast between the situation in Ukraine and the situation in Eritrea. The only difference is in Ukraine, the invasion is by Russia, but in Eritrea, the evil things that, or the hell things that we are facing, the whole community of Eritrea is by its own regime.
Thank you very much, Mul Buhan. The following questions go to Mr. Emil Ures. What is the objective of bringing this announcement at this time? Could you also explain more why the European Union has not taken more action against war crimes committed by Eritrean government? And are there different opinions among various European countries that make up the European Union? So those three questions, if you can, Emil.
Thank you very much for those questions, Chair and listeners. The first question as to what is the objective of bringing the announcement at this time, I would say it is high time. The Foundation has noted with great concern that there was very little action taken proactively by the international community, and there is, in view of the Foundation, a high amount of urgency to now act. And since the actors themselves are not actually doing that much, the Foundation considers it necessary to give them a little nudge, and perhaps even to take next legal steps, including ways to get them to, for instance, instate sanctions. That links to the second question: why has there not been more action taken against these war crimes? Specifically by the EU on the topic of sanctions, it is our understanding that there was a lack of agreement between the different countries which make up the EU. It is unclear to the Foundation why that would be. After all, there is clear evidence that in any case Eritrean forces have committed grave violations of human rights. It has been widely documented by civil society, by the media, and by other actors in the field. So there is no reasonable explanation for it other than simple politics, which is unacceptable. So for the information we have is indeed that there is a lack of consensus, and yeah, for that reason, no sanctions have been instituted. Insofar as any other action from the EU, to the information of the Foundation, there has been none. If there has been any action, we would welcome hearing from the European Union. And we would also welcome the European Union actually taking these actions now. That has become even more clear that grave violations of human rights have actually taken place in Tigray and also in Eritrea. I believe I've answered the questions, Chair. If that is not the case, please, whoever asked the question, feel free to make a follow-up question.
No, thank you. Yeah, you made very good points there. So we go to Clara. There's another question for you. The questioner is saying, thank you for organizing this important announcement and taking steps towards criminals. In regard to high-level government officials' involvement of human trafficking and other criminal activities, how can we coordinate our efforts? Do you consider creating a system to share information and evidences soon? How can we link and take this related action in USA?
Thank you very much for the question, and I think that's a very good question, because the way that these networks are constructed and what we're talking about is just incredibly difficult to show how this is all you know, how this is all operating, because the funding flows are very, very much in the dark. The information is very much in the dark. I think it would be very good for us researchers and other organizations that are interested in these topics to cooperate together to see how to bring the pieces of this puzzle together, because it's really of the highest societal priorities that that this problem is really tackled from the top level. There's a lot of people involved in migratory flows that are just trying to make a living. And those are not the people that are organizing this and that are profiting from this. And I think it's important to stress this, that really what the foundation has also been trying to do with this legal action, I think, is to show that this is coordinated from high levels, and that is where it needs to be tackled, for example, with sanctions. And as researchers, we can only play a role in trying to establish the ground, the facts on the ground, as far as we can manage this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just a quick follow-up. What about Sudan? Is the country involved in trafficking? To you, Clara.
There's a lot of trafficking going on in Sudan. And also for the trajectories of Eritrean refugees. Most of the Eritrean refugees that flee, and my field of research is Eritrean refugees, this is why I'm focusing on this. But many of the routes towards Libya start in Sudan. But even there, most of the people that I've spoken to in the purpose of my research name Eritreans as their contact persons here as well, although I'm not trying to claim that there's no involvement of Sudanese people as well.
Thank you, Clara. A couple of questions for Eritreans. Let's see how we can tackle them very quickly. The first one is, do you know which EU countries are more supportive of sanctioning Eritrea? Let's maybe handle that, then I'll say the next.
Thank you, Dr. Marchant. Thank you for this question. Unfortunately, the Foundation has no detailed information on the exact positions of the various countries. That is confidential. In general, from my previous work from the Foundation, it has become clear that the Netherlands has been critical of Eritrea, of its regime, and has also generally supported sanctions and other actions against Eritrea. So that is one thing I can say. Unfortunately, I do not have much other information available at the moment.
Okay.
If anyone has that information, feel free to share it.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So the follow-up question to you, Eritreans, is the EU is still working with Eritrea in the field of development projects, roads, health, organization, etc. So-called because the benefits are going directly to the poorest people. Is this possible in a dictatorship like Eritrea, where the regime is controlling everything and is using forced labor on large scale?
Okay, thank you for this question, and it's a very pointed question. And it is exactly the topic of the court case that I did on behalf of the Foundation for Human Rights against the European Union. In that case, assistance for the building of roads, financial assistance, was being provided by the European Union to Eritrea. But as the person asking this question is clearly aware, the Eritrean state is organized in such a way that any financial aid will benefit, in any case, also the Eritrean regime, and is very likely to be misused. And therefore, it is highly problematic to financially support any projects in Eritrea, even if they will partly benefit the poorest people in Eritrea, because it's very hard to say what will be done with those funds. It should also be noted that there is no way to trace what happens to funds in Eritrea. The system of accounting in Eritrea is non-existent. So for any donors, that is also a big problem. And it was also a big problem for the European Union in the previous project, which has since been stopped. If the persons watching have any specific information on such a project, the Foundation would welcome receiving it, because that would be worth taking a closer look at to see if those projects will actually comply with the norms of human rights, which the EU is bound by.
Yeah, thank you. The other question to you is, why is the arms embargo not imposed on Eritrea and Ethiopia?
Excuse me, could you repeat the question?
It is, why is it that the arms embargo is not imposed on Eritrea and Ethiopia? Arms embargo.
The arms embargo. Okay, sorry, I did not hear that the first time around. Thanks. Thanks for asking this question. I do not know. Again, this goes to a point of policy, and the decisions that are taken are, from the point of view of the Foundation, very unclear. There's clear evidence of human rights violations. The information of the Foundation is that, for instance, Russia is also delivering weapons, for instance, drones, to Eritrea. Currently, there are no sanctions in place on Eritrea except the US sanctions. So, in that respect, this would be another argument to reimpose or to impose sanctions from the EU or from the UN on Eritrea to actually be able to effectuate an arms embargo on Eritrea, which is highly necessary given the previous actions of Eritrea using its military force to destabilize the Horn of Africa region.
Thank you, thank you. Before we ask Lara another question, there is one more for you, Eritreans. Eritrea didn't sign the Rome Statute. The ICC prosecutor can't sadly do anything. What do you think, or what do you expect ICC to do?
That is a very good question. I will not go into the legal details, but the short answer to this is that there are various routes which would enable the prosecutor of the ICC to commence an investigation. One such route, for instance, is a referral by the Security Council of the situation in Eritrea to the ICC. That is what happened, for instance, in the situation in Sudan. Another route is that, which for instance has been taken in Ukraine, is that the country involved will accept the jurisdiction of the ICC, and in that case it would help if states actually also write to the prosecutor underlining their support for such a step. Also, it should be noted that the ICC and its related organizations have powers which relate to the protection of the interests of victims. So that is another route which is not directly an investigation leading to a criminal case against specific persons, but will enable the protection of victims. So the ICC has certain powers in that respect. And for more details on that, I would refer to the document which is distributed in order to not get bogged down into legal detail. Thanks for asking that very good question. And thank you, Dr. Reginald.
Thank you, Eritreans, for your answers. We go to Clara. Are Sudanese authorities collaborating with Eritrean authorities in human trafficking?
I can't really give a conclusive answer on that at the moment. What I do know is that a lot of Eritreans have been returned from Sudan back to Eritrea. That is a practice that, as far as I know, is also still ongoing. And this is also refoulement, because Eritrean refugees recognized as refugees should not be returned to the country that they are fleeing from. But other than that, from my research, I am not yet able to give a good answer to that question.
Thank you, Clara. To Mulubahan, Eritrea has refused COVID vaccines, but is clearly purchasing weapons. How is this not highlighted by UN or EU or USA?
The Eritrean regime isolates Eritrea from the international community for more than 2 decades. That is why the regime can do whatever the regime wants to do over the Eritrean community or over the Eritrean people. So the main reason that we lead the legal action to this today's press conference is such cases, such causes. So the Eritrean regime is not followed by rule or no constitutional government. It is one-man power leaded to the system in Eritrea. That's why they can say no or okay, depends on their willing, on the regime's willing. And then that's why the Eritrean community in diaspora asked to make demonstrations against the COVID vaccination, that the regime should have to accept or the rights to the Eritrean people to take the vaccination, but they do not allow or they do not accept these things. For example, national cycling team of Eritrea was not participate in Rwanda's tour of Rwanda due to the unvaccinated members of the team from Eritrea. So the rights already not get to the people of Eritrea by the regime, and that's why the international community, international organizations, European Union or America do not take any action against the regime that stops or that do not allow the rights of the people to have a vaccination.
Thank you, Mulu Bahan. The following question is for you, Mulu Bahan and Clara. The question is the case of Switzerland of Jonas. He was sent back from Switzerland to Eritrea. Once back home, he was tortured, imprisoned. It's the first official case. I think you have to remember this in the court case. Do you think this should be included in the case you bring?
Shall I start?
Yeah, you can start.
Thank you. I think this is a very important case because people are still being returned to Eritrea, not just in this case, which was allegedly also, I mean, it was a voluntary return, but in this sense, it's not voluntary if people have no other choice. And this is not the only case in which that is happening. It also happens with Eritrean refugees in Libya who are who can accept a voluntary return to Eritrea, but it's highly questionable how voluntary a return is when the situation is as dire as in Libya. And in the case of Jonas from Switzerland also, he was deeply depressed and under those conditions accepted a return where he was arrested and disappeared and tortured before he was able to escape again. I've also spoken to someone else who had the same situation in Libya, who was also immediately upon his return arrested. Returnees are also reconscripted. I've mentioned before that people were returned from Sudan, people have been returned from Egypt. So this is very serious, and it should be stressed that people cannot be safely returned to Eritrea and should not have to face this under any circumstances because of the severe human rights abuses that they're facing. So,
yeah, this is a very good question, and you know, if you remember, Dr. Reginald, there was a person who already sent to Eritrea from USA, but when he was in transition in Egypt, then he was hanging himself at that airport. Then there are people who abducted from the camps in Tigray, and they again escaped from the regime. Still they are around the Horn of Africa's country. There are people who return forcibly from Egypt at this moment, maybe 2-3 months ago. Even children and mothers of children, elderly people are forced to turn back to Eritrea. There were people who turn back from Russia maybe within these 3 years, but they say they choose to escape or to return back to other countries of Africa. There are people who return back forcibly from Egypt, from Sudan, as well from Addis Ababa, and from different countries. Same, there was a trial to bring back an Eritrean woman, mother with child from France as well. But all things that all people who return back to Eritrea are mostly disappeared and or imprisoned or forced to join the military service. So this is, yeah, we will, I think, conclude in the court case and on the cases that we already started today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And this one now is again from Mulbahan and Eritreans. The UN has two modalities for working in countries. In Eritrea, the UN cannot use direct implementation, even when it is necessary. Hence, the UN has to work directly with the government. Do you think that the UN should be encouraged to change how they work with Eritrea? Yuren, would you like to go first, perhaps?
I think the UN, in all its interactions with the Eritrean regime, should be very clearly aware of what it means to work in Eritrea and what it means to engage with the Eritrean state, and to, for instance, not be fooled by the fact that you would be working with a company called the Red Sea Trading Corporation, as that is, for instance, another shell of the Eritrean regime. So it is not impossible to engage with Eritrea. However, the UN should take a lot of care and should very, very clearly understand what they are dealing with. And it is a complicated country with a lot of history, and the regime has a long history of dealing with its partners in ways which are less than reliable. So that is very important for the UN to realize in all its interactions, however well-intentioned they may be. Mulu, if you want to add anything, please feel free.
If we are looking to the other angle, if the UN or other countries or organizations or unions are engaged to the regime in Eritrea, but the Eritrean people has no constitutional government at this time, has no chosen government in Eritrea, has no officially nominated people do not support this regime. So that's why millions of Eritreans are evacuated or migrated from Eritrea. So is the United Nations is on behalf of the people of Eritrea or on the behalf of the regime in Eritrea? That is the main question that we should have to raise. Then depending on the activities that practiced in Eritrean people, the crimes committed in Eritrean people, and the crime committed by the regime all over the whole of Africa. Yeah, that is not good to engage the United Nations to support in development cases or something human rights development or something others. That's why this case is more important to magnify the evil activities of the regime towards the international community.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Mr. Urens, the question is, Eritrea did not sign the Rome Statute, but it did sign the Geneva Convention. Is this relevant for your case?
Again, a great question. Thanks for asking. In light of the time, I will keep the answer brief. It is very relevant. The Geneva Convention is widely ratified by a lot of countries across the world. There is a lot of evidence that war crimes have indeed been committed in the context of the conflict in Tigray and also within Eritrea. There are two consequences which are notable. The first is, of course, that these are some of the gravest crimes known to man. So any state, any international organization, and actually any party should do its utmost to make sure that they do not go unpunished. And secondly, linked to that, a notable effect of war crimes, and especially grave war crimes, is that any state is able to exercise its national jurisdiction in order to prosecute war criminals linked to those crimes or suspected of those crimes. For instance, in the Netherlands, a number of people involved in the genocide in Rwanda in the 1990s have actually been successfully prosecuted. So that route is also open, in the opinion of the Foundation, to anyone who is suspected of committing war crimes and is residing in a country which is signatory to the Geneva Convention. So that is the principle of universal jurisdiction.
Thank you very much. We have two questions, maybe some quick answers. The first one is Mulbuhan. What is the position of the African Union? Should they not do more?
What did he say? Sorry?
What is the position of the African Union in whatever we are discussing? Should they not do more?
I think the Eritrean regime participation in the African Union is not that much significant. Even Eritrea was a member of the IGAD, but now it is not. And the case of the African Union, you say?
Yes, African Union.
Yeah, sometimes the regime withdraw from the membership of the African Union. Sometimes they send some representatives to the African Union. Mostly they discriminate, the regime discriminates the African Union itself. So at this time, African Union is a part of the international community, and it is a vital, we expect to play a vital role in the cases that we are already raising. I hope they play a big role in the...
Thank you, Mulbuhan. Yeah, thank you. So this last question to Mulbuhan and Clara, do you know of any refugees abducted by Eritrea who were later forced to join the army in Tigray?
You want to answer first?
What did he say?
If there are any refugees that were kidnapped from Eritrea that later joined.
Oh yeah, there are several refugees who abducted from Hensas camp. Later they joined the military and participate in the war in Tigray, but some of them escaped from from Tigray and are in some places. We met them.
Okay.
I've also met at least one person who was conscripted again after being returned and then fled to Sudan.
Okay. Thank you very much. And this final question to the panelists as concluding remarks. What do you expect of the UN inquiry in Ethiopia? What do you expect of the UN inquiry in Ethiopia? Is this relevant for the human rights situation in Eritrea? Perhaps Urens, you could start, and then Clara and Mulu.
Of course, the Foundation expects it to be impartial and thorough. In addition, it should be speedy, as BBC News has already been reporting that destruction of evidence has started to take place. For instance, mass graves are being dug up, according to the BBC, and the bodies contained in them are being burned. So the evidence destruction is systematic, is organized, it's already taking place. And secondly, and this is not so much about the inquiry itself, but more about the follow-up, it is, in view of the Foundation, crucial that the reports or the findings of the inquiry are not set aside or ignored, but are actually given concrete follow-up by the international community in any forum or before any court which is competent to deal with that issue. That is very important since history has shown us that while a lot of information is available and a lot of evidence is available on the fact that grave violations of human rights have been committed within Eritrea, but also in the context of the Tigray conflict, it sometimes has been a lot harder to effectuate any follow-up. And that is what is needed so much, is concrete follow-up, concrete actions, and concrete assistance and concrete justice for the victims of these crimes.
Thank you very much. Clara?
Yeah, I completely would support that. And I don't have much else to say except to say that really international investigation, a thorough international investigation, is just of key importance in this. And it's also the case for human rights violations within Eritrea. There have already been some really good investigations, notably of the UN Commission on Human Rights in Eritrea. And there's still also no concrete follow-up to that. So I really underwrite the statement of Mr. Eritreans that any investigation should also then lead to follow-up.
Thank you very much. Mulu Bahan?
I think that is important, and maybe that can help us to show the human rights violations and crimes against the Eritrean as well as the people in Horn Africa, in Tigray. The participation of the regime, the international inquiry can get there and can go beyond to investigate more about the regime inside Eritrea and outside Eritrea.
Thank you. Thank you very much, panelists, for this wonderful presentation and concern for Eritrea, Tigray, and the refugees and the persons that have been affected by the situation there. One of the questions that has come out is to understand the situation, and we know that Eritrea, Tigray have suffered massive blackouts and blockade of the internet, so people cannot access any news outside or communicate with the outer world. So thank you very much, our panelists. We were very lucky to have Mulu Bahan Temalso, Director of Foundation Human Rights for Eritrea, Emil Eritreans, lawyer with the law firm Kennedy Van der Laan, Clara Smith, researcher at Tilburg University. The text of the presentation by Mr. Eritreans is available on the website of Kennedy Van der Laan and also the Facebook and Twitter account of the Foundation Human Rights for Eritrea.